You had me at Cello, Cello. You had me at Cello. You had me at Cello. Oh, you had me at Cello. Hi, everybody. 5 o'clock on a Friday. Time, among other things, for Cello Chat. I am very much looking forward to this as always, and especially this week with my guest, Dung Pham. Delighted to have you on the interview show, as it were. How are you doing, Yung?
I am doing well. It was so great to hear from you. I so admire the work you did. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Whitcomb was our gracious host for many, many years of our district chamber music retreat, and phenomenal cellist and chamber music coach. So we really enjoyed a lot of great time watching you teach and having our students learn from you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I've always, it's like I've worked with quite a few high school programs, as you can imagine, over the years. And the ones that clearly have a successful recipe, I just always want to find out if they'll share some of their secrets. So I'm looking forward to seeing, because year after year, your program is always a wonderful one to come and work with, and what you do with the students. But let's start with an introduction. If you'll tell about yourself, your musical background to our viewers.
Well, I feel like I'm a pretty typical public school, product. I started cello in 5th grade in our school program, and I remember being inspired to play strings. My neighbor across the street, Robert, played viola, and he would babysit me. So I remember listening to him practice his viola, and I just loved the sound of the viola. So it's highly ironic that I now play cello, because when it came time to sign up, I remember talking to my music teacher saying, I want to play viola. And now as a music teacher, I understand that he obviously was desperately in need of cellists, because he told me, well, we have enough violas this year, but would you consider playing cello? And I'm like, is it like viola? Because of course I wasn't paying attention during the demonstrations because I had my heart set on playing viola. So I was like, oh yeah, if it's like viola, I'll give cello a try. And I still remember my dad and I going to the music store to rent my cello. And the lady came out from the back and she had this giant instrument. And my dad turns to me and says, you want to play this instrument? It's bigger than you are. And I was like, yeah, Dad, of course I want to play cello. Because of course I wasn't going to admit that I wasn't paying attention in class, right? But thank you, Mr. Kometz, because of him, he is the reason I started down this path to cello. And of course, I fell in love with the instrument, and I love viola still, but cello was definitely the instrument that I was meant to play. So, and then from there, just playing in high school, just grateful for all the teachers along the way who saw that I obviously really enjoyed playing my instrument and encouraged me to maybe look into taking private lessons, invited me to play in various chamber groups so that I could span my repertoire experience. And I really want to give a shout out to my high school orchestra director, Merle Wagner. He and his wife had their own little chamber music night at their house every Friday night. And every once in a while, they would invite some of the high school students to come play with them. And it was because of that experience playing chamber music with them that I was really exposed to that independence that happens when you have the security of playing in a group in chamber music, but yet still having to really know your own part. And because of that experience, I really became very quickly familiar with the repertoire that was out there. So when I went to college and beyond, I knew a lot of the repertoire I needed to play when I was doing gigs. And so, always forever grateful to Merle and Debbie for giving me that chamber music experience. And I think that's one of the reasons chamber music is very near and dear to my heart. I just feel like that's where a lot of my personal growth as a musician has happened. And also, of course, shout out to all of my cello teachers along the way. Ann Balderson, who first started me on cello lessons, and then Nina Ehrlich, who I studied with in high school and then continued to study with at Augustana College. Surin Bagratuni at University of Illinois when I went to do my graduate work. Just wonderful teachers along the way. And, it was just really neat. Every time I bring in a clinician, I just love hearing their way of explaining things, that will just tweak a memory going, oh my gosh, I forgot someone had explained that particular technique to me in that way. And I never thought about it, or I haven't used it in a while. And that's a really great technique. Just last week, actually, we were doing our chamber music kind of recitals. And one of the technicians was talking about how when you do string crossings to make them a little smoother, to think about being on the inside of the string. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard about that in years. And I was like, what a great way to think about that. Because it just, instead of just talking about the mechanics of what you're doing with your arm, just visualizing the inside of the string and being able to rock that direction. I was like, oh yeah, good stuff that I've forgotten about, so it's really great to keep that stuff refreshed in your memory.
Yeah, outstanding. And so now you're at Palatine High School, which is west of Chicago, but you've gradually worked your way eastward. You started out over Quad Cities. How did your career progress after college?
Yeah, so it was an interesting path for me. Teaching has been wonderful, and I was never quite ready to leave where I was, and these opportunities kind of presented themselves. So I actually started my career. I like to refer to my mascot. So I started in Freeport, Illinois, where I was a pretzel. And that was such a wonderful program. It was in this small town, but there was such a love for the arts there. And conveniently, the junior high and high school were across the street from each other. So even though I taught 5th grade to 12th grade, I had a very easy commute because I was basically teaching 3 levels in just 2 buildings. The high school kids walked across the street to the junior high building. So all my secondary classes were in one building. And then I just went to the middle school, which was a 5-6 building, and so like for teaching such a wide age range, I had very little travel, so it was great. I think, especially for my first experience, to be able to see the program from its inception to seeing how the kids evolve over time. And that is something I miss in my current position, is being able to just build that relationship with kids over a longer period of time. I'm grateful that at the high school level, we do get to see them for 4 years. But when I left Freeport, I had taught those kids for 6 years. So I hadn't quite graduated my 5th grade class, and so there is something for having kids for 8 years, before they leave you, that it's just cool to see how they grow and how not only they evolve as musicians, but as young, human beings. It's kind of fun to see that growth. And so at that time, when I left Freeport, I then went to the Quad Cities where I grew up, but worked for the rival school at Rock Island School District instead of where I graduated in Moline. And so that was fun too, because it was a more urban school district, so we had a lot of kids that were a little bit more on the lower income side. But one of the things I really appreciate is those kids that oftentimes maybe didn't have a lot of monetary resources, they really appreciated what the arts brought to their lives. And I just feel like they were so grateful for that opportunity to make music. And they were so grateful for the impact that arts have on their lives, because maybe they didn't have as many other options or as many other creative outlets outside of school. So it really became something that they were so passionate about and that they really committed themselves to, and so that was, again, it was a great school district to work for in terms of fun people to work with, kids that really appreciated the power of music and the arts, and where it could take them in and outside of themselves. And then through my work with District 211, coaching for that same chamber retreat that I had the pleasure of working with you on, there was an opportunity to then go there and work. And so again, different experience, going from teaching 5-12 music to only focusing on high school and the demands of doing a high school only program. So I'm very fortunate that my job entails solely working with high school orchestra. Although this year I've kind of stretched my wings into mariachi, and I know that kind of talks a little bit about one of the other questions you had. So I'll hold off on talking about the mariachi a little bit, but I am very fortunate that I get to spend my day teaching orchestra and solely orchestra. So very grateful for that.
All right. One other question about your career trajectory. How did you how did your career path end up with the administrative component as well?
So that's interesting. That is something very specific to this last position I was in. In our particular school district, our department chairs are actually department based. Like for instance, when I was at Rock Island, we had kind of the department was foreign language and art and music and English actually all together. So there was one department chair that did all of those categories. And in District 211, we actually have one department chair per department. So it is an administrative and teaching role. So for instance, I, as music chair at my building, I teach 4 classes a day, and then the rest of my time is spent doing administrative work. So that includes doing evaluations for our staff and just the music department. So I feel lucky that I have a voice at the administrative table so that I can kind of bring the arts perspective to decision-making as it applies to the school. And it also gives me better insight into like that bigger picture of where the school district is going so that I can help maybe voice like, okay, how can the arts fit in with some of these larger range planning things that we have too, so that it's not just about maybe some of the core classes. So that's kind of neat. And so I know of a lot of other administrative roles that are very heavily on the administrative side. So again, I feel like this is a great fit for me because I still get to teach. I still get to work with kids on a daily basis. And I still get to have a voice at the table to maybe help steer some direction, but I'm not doing wholly one or the other.
All right. Yeah, excellent. All right. So your very successful program. One of the questions I always do ask is about motivating and inspiring students. And of course, I mean, students are so different, which is great, but it also can mean that it's hard to give a one-size-fits-all answer to this sort of question. But maybe what is either your general approach or some of your favorites in your bag of tricks for helping to keep students not just playing their instruments, but really on fire about it?
Well, a couple of things that I feel like are specific to the way I like to run my classes is that I really do believe in making sure kids understand the process behind the decision-making we make in music. I remember oftentimes as a student sitting in orchestra, we would do something and I would ask why, and the answer would be, well, just because, or it's because of this, this, and that. But then we didn't have a lot of conversation about, well, how could we interpret it differently, which is very different from when you're doing chamber music, right? There's a lot more give and take in terms of like, well, this is how I interpret this. How do you hear this phrase? And again, that's why I'm drawn to chamber music. And so I do like to try to run my rehearsals more like a chamber rehearsal. So we will talk about bowings and talk about, why do you think this bowing should be worked like this? Technically, how does it work out for us? Stylistically, how does it work out for us? I know a lot of teachers that are like, nope, we give the bowings to the kids ahead of time. And I understand that is probably sometimes easier and less frustrating. And I don't do this maybe on all the pieces, but I definitely want to try to give every orchestra at least one piece that we can explore together and do some decision-making together. So that it becomes our interpretation of the piece rather than just like, here's how I hear it. So now you make my vision come to life. In fact, it was really funny because one of my recent grads, her mom was telling me they were talking over break when she was home. And she was like, yeah, so in orchestra the other day, at her college, she asked the conductor some question about how they were doing something in rehearsal or something about the music. And she's like, well, how about and kind of engaging the conversation the way I encouraged them to do in class. And the conductor was just like, well, this is the way we're going to do it. And she was just rather taken aback because she wasn't used to, like your job in orchestra is to like kind of go with the maestro's, interpretation of it. So that made me feel good. But then I was also thinking, maybe we should have that conversation about this isn't the way it always works in the world either. Yeah.
That's funny. Well, and so the chamber music programs, the chamber music retreat that the whole D211 string area does each year, that is an integral part of then the way that you encourage students to think about their role in music making, whether it's, in any kind of music making. Is that true?
Yes. I will say, unfortunately, we have actually had to step back from doing a district-wide chamber music retreat, which makes me a little sad. But one of the things that we all truly believe in is the power of chamber music and how it can help really propel student growth. So all of us in the district still do incorporate some sort of chamber unit within our curriculum throughout the school year. And so, and it's fun. Like the other day, during this past unit, when we did that, the kids are harnessing their technology. I had a group, it was 2 days before their performance, and a kid was out sick. And so they Skyped her into their rehearsal, and so she was at home rehearsing with them, and it was just so cool to see that the kids were taking such ownership and pride in their work, and they're really thinking outside the box to figure out, okay, well, we can still rehearse together even though we're not physically in the same space, so.
Right. And of course, leading by example, setting a good model is so valuable as well. And another thing that always impressed me really from the very first year that you all reached out to Whitewater, there was already a nice bond among the D211 directors. And, it was just a coincidence, right? That you happened to be the instrumentation of a string quartet, and then you'd rehearse together and model the sort of chamber music playing that you were trying to instill in your students as well.
Yeah, again, just, I'm so blessed and so fortunate that life has taken me the path it has, and I was able to work with the amazing people that I'm so fortunate enough to work with. And it did work out that we had a perfect, string quartet, or quintet, as the case may be, on certain years. And it was just so much fun. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about my colleagues is that they understand the power of modeling for our students. One of the technique teachers we worked with, I still quote Elspeth to this day: the kids don't know what they don't know. And so until kids really hear what nuanced playing sounds like, until they hear what a clean shift sounds like, until they can hear the difference between how you can put emphasis, or expression into one single note, they don't know how to do that. They can't hear the difference because they've never heard it before. So you need to model that for them if you expect them to actually be able to attain that. So that's why we always felt like, A, it was great for us to model it for them, but B, it's just so gosh darn fun to make music with good musicians, right? I mean, we've probably had more fun in our rehearsals just goofing around and just trying crazy different things musically. And I still remember there was one summer that the parent chaperones were walking by and they were prepared to get stern with a group of kids who were goofing around because I heard too much laughing coming out of our room, and they realized it was us, and we were just having so much fun that we were, you could hear our laughter all the way down the hallway. So, I work with amazing people.
Outstanding. Oh, that's so wonderful to have colleagues that you love, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. So then how does the Monarch Rose Trio, tell me about that ensemble?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, wow, you're doing some digging. I love chamber music. And so when I first moved up to the Chicagoland area, I was just looking for a group to play with. And it turns out of my colleague's daughter was the violinist. And then she happened to know the violist. So, and the three of us just wanted to do chamber music. And so we just kind of put together that group. We would meet sporadically, at someone's house. And I think this for me was the learning curve of moving up to the Chicagoland area. Everything looks close on paper, but then when you start factoring in traffic and then, babysitting schedules and, everybody's kids' schedules, it's actually really difficult to meet on a regular basis and have any sort of like even full-time ensemble work. But we just really had a good time playing chamber music together. We would occasionally gig and do, the occasional wedding. And, we would just set a couple recitals a year just to give ourselves a deadline. I don't know about you, but I work much better with a deadline. Otherwise, I tend to just goof around. So having that deadline of, okay, we need to prepare something to perform in public, was really a great motivating factor for us to really get serious about our practice time. Because playing together is fun, but there is a difference between just playing together for fun and actually making serious musical growth on a particular piece of music.
It's very true. And I think you may be among the first people on this series to mention that, but there are definitely a lot of people that need that deadline in order, like the first time it's just fun to play for the sake of having fun, and maybe the second time and maybe the third time, but then after a while you're retreading old ground. To feel like you are moving forward, you have to see that point in the future and say, what do we want it to sound like by that point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. All right. Well, I do want to hear about the mariachi that you've been doing as well. But I'm just kind of curious with, the instrument. I actually originally, when I was in fifth grade, thought I wanted to play violin, but ended up being directed to the cello first as well. But you know how the instrument, neither of us is the first one on this series to talk about how sometimes the instrument also chooses you. And of course, as wonderful as the unaccompanied repertoire, and then the cello and piano, the orchestral repertoire, absolutely all of it, just fabulous and wonderful. But the hats that we have to wear as cello players when we're playing in a string quartet or some such thing, is that part of what attracts you to chamber music, or do you think that you would be, regardless of the instrument that you play? Do you find there is a fascination with the hats? I can't think of a better word for it than just the perspectives that you have to have depending on the line that you're given at a given spot in chamber playing as a cellist.
I think maybe it has less to do with the role of cello or the particular line than it has to do with the collaboration aspect.
Okay.
For such an introvert, and I know people who know me are like, you're not an introvert. I'm like, yeah, I actually am a bit of an introvert. But there's something about chamber music that like makes me become an extrovert, and I love the collaborative nature of chamber music, the exchanging of ideas, the like, oh, that's the way you heard it. Like, I wouldn't have interpreted that way. Let's try it. That is different than being, and trust me, I have shivers thinking about many moments on the orchestral stage in front, in a large ensemble playing, Shostakovich 5 or, whatever it is that is amazing as well. But I think just in the rehearsal aspect and the performance aspect of chamber music, I just feel like there's much more of me as a musician present in the music because I really helped shape that interpretation. So I think that for me is what is really appealing about chamber music. And the other side of it is it's like the closest thing to like soloistically playing that I can tolerate, because I love playing, but it terrifies me, especially when I have to play by myself, and it's, I share this with my students all the time because I think like, oh, like you've done this for forever. Like you don't get nervous anymore when you play. And I'm like, no, like I still like even playing something easy in church, I still get butterflies in my stomach and I still kind of have to go through my routine of like breathing, and I still have to prepare to play even something really easy. Like I still have to prepare for that performance so that my performance nervousness doesn't like make me do weird things, or have that shaky bow syndrome or whatever. So, I feel like I don't know. My experience as a performer is I never really get over that performance anxiety. And so I will play solos, I'll play, things, but I don't enjoy it as much as when I get to play with other people. I think I feel that safety net by just having other people with me, when I'm playing.
It's interesting though, because there have been several great, just world-class, phenomenal performers who also have reported that, they never get to a point where the butterflies go away. Horowitz, for example, and so I suppose to some people that might sound, oh no, what if I never get to a point where they go away? But then when you see them be able to sit down and make great, just stunning music anyway, that should be inspiring in and of itself, and that you can learn to let the music flow regardless of the butterflies.
Right. It's less about like not having the butterflies, but how to overcome them, or how to control them enough that you can allow that music to speak, right? And not to let it hold you back.
So. Here. And then also with your point, like about Shostakovich 5, you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, of course, you are wanting the whole orchestra that's playing that Shostakovich symphony or whatever it is to have that same wherewithal and awareness and listening, in addition to watching, of that their chamber music hat hasn't come off when they're playing in a symphony.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm curious. Tell me about the mariachi program, and when did this come about?
Yeah. So one of the questions you had actually put down for us to talk about was, maybe some different styles of music and how it has influenced us.
Yes.
And for me, a couple of different things. One of the groups that I really appreciate is like the piano guys. I love how they can mix classical with pop, and that, they make classical music approachable to maybe people who aren't familiar with classical music because of the way they incorporate it with things that are maybe more familiar to their ear. Right. And so that's one of the things, like when we do our chamber music unit, yes, I would like the kids to do more Mozart and to do more Beethoven and to do maybe some of those more standard things. But I find that the kids actually sometimes choose harder technical things based on a song because they really want to play a particular certain pop song, for instance, and they will go out of their way to find an arrangement of it. I had a group with 2 violas and 3 violins and no cellos, and they found an arrangement. Thank goodness for the internet, right? So I think that flexibility in allowing choice for genres that people feel pulled to, and there's always going to be good technique you can teach with that. But yeah, the mariachi thing is an interesting. Our school demographics have shifted quite a bit over the last 10 years, and we're getting more Spanish-speaking students in our building. And one of our feeder schools actually started a mariachi program, but then there was no place for the kids to go because we did not have a mariachi group or ensemble or anything up at the high school. So we've been working to get that into the curriculum. So the last few years, we've started a mariachi club. So that was a way for kids to still continue their mariachi skills that they learned in junior high, not in a class form. And then this year we actually started we were able to offer the mariachi class as a curricular class during the school day. So, I mean, for me, as someone who has no experience doing mariachi, like I'm kind of staying one step ahead of the kids. I'm doing lots of my own research and, asking lots of questions from my colleagues who have mariachi experience, doing a lot of listening, a lot of researching, looking up YouTube videos. But one of the things that really I appreciate about that music and that style is like, you really have to dig deeper into like the actual whole performance as a whole, right? As classical players, like one of the things that I joke with my students all the time is like, we all look so serious. Like here we are, we're playing Mozart. And we all look very stoic and we're like concentrating, right? And we don't look like we're having any fun, and we have fun when we play music. And, when you go and you see these mariachi bands, they are all in, they have everything memorized. I mean, there is no inhibition at all in their performance. And so we've been working towards that in our club, but when you only meet once a week, there's really not time to memorize, or to be able to reinforce the way you need to memorize, so like we kind of we're only able to grow our repertoire so far, and then we stop, and all this stuff. So we were able to play, and we were able to do a few things. But this year, what I found is having it as a class where we can meet every day, like we've been able to actually dig deeper into like, what does it mean to like play mariachi music? What does it mean to play stylistically correctly? We're working on and like for mariachi, you actually sing and play at the same time. Not everybody does, but a lot of the band will either join in on the chorus or and so getting these kids who are not singers to like commit to like singing, like I was so proud of them because for the last concert, granted we did one song, but they sang and they played and, got way out of their comfort zone. For this gringa, I'm learning how to do gritos and, I don't know what I'm saying in Spanish, but the kids are helping me with my Spanish enough I can sing in Spanish, right? So, for me, it's been a huge learning curve too. And it's been a lot of fun to do that journey together with the kids.
Wow, that's terrific. Outstanding. Boy, juggling all the things that you're talking about. It's interesting because, of course, there's only so much time in each class period. And it can be interesting. I don't direct any orchestras. But when I go and I visit a whole bunch throughout the course of a year, how various ones will allocate their time, and in the end, it can often seem like whether you take time out of your time that you have with them to rehearse orchestral pieces, to have them do chamber music, or to have them comment on their suggestions for particular bowings of a given passage or their interpretation or something like that, might be to other places outside of their realm. No, I have to address this and that's, but it's so interesting how often, of course, all the roads do lead towards the musical goal that you're after. And in the end, your orchestras sound very engaged and very good. So hats off to you for that.
That's very kind of you. And I think, everyone, it always comes back to like, what is our ultimate goal? And I think we all really want our students to leave us being able to be independent musicians. Yeah. And I grew up in the age where it was very much, here's the teacher and here's the student, and the student just receives this information from the teacher, and it really got my wheels turning when I started asking my kids questions like, why is this an up bow? And like, they didn't know stuff. They didn't know the basics of like bowing rules, and then I thought about it, I'm like, when did I learn it? I don't remember my orchestra teacher like talking about that, but I kind of like learned that through my chamber music, or I learned it at youth symphony, or I learned it at this music camp. And it wasn't necessarily stuff that I talked about in my daily orchestra class. And so again, that kind of just started the wheels turning about like, okay, this is important. This was obviously important enough to my musical growth. So I probably need to figure out how to prioritize it in my own teaching, but then something has to go, right? There's not enough time. So, I sacrifice maybe the amount of literature we do. So we do less literature so that we can go deeper. We can have room for discussion. Maybe I don't push maybe the depth, the difficulty level as much as I should, especially with my older kids, because again, I want to leave space and time for us to like carve out interpretation together. But in order to do that, it's going to be less of me saying, here's how you're going to do it. We're going to kill and drill and do like the things that you need to do when you have like a really heavy repertoire driven program. Right. So, and I think in the end, everyone just has to figure out where they are in that spectrum of balance between difficulty, amount, discussion, how much you want to do of each, and it's hard because there's no one right answer, right?
But that makes it fun too. All right, upcoming projects and performances, either left in the spring semester or in the rest of 2022.
So we've done the bulk of our performances. We added something new this year, which was very exciting. We had a department-wide concert in the gym. So we literally had every band, choir, and orchestra student on the gym floor. And we, again, decided to go short and sweet, right? So we had all the bands playing together, like 2 songs, choir singing 3 songs, orchestra doing 2 songs, mariachi performing 1 song. And then we did a whole ensemble piece together as a finale, so just a unique experience. I think after coming back after not playing together, I mean, realistically, some of our freshmen have not played in almost 2 years, like an actual performance, which breaks your heart when you think about it, right? So we really wanted to give them just something really unique that they can hang on to, because we don't know that that's feasible to do a concert like that every year, but we thought it was important this year to try to pull something like that together. And then really what we have left orchestrally is just our big final concert. So getting kind of the repertoire set for that, doing full orchestra. And then actually mariachi is very busy. We have a performance this Thursday for a local fundraiser for our local Palatine Opportunity Center. So they've got a full set for that. And then they're playing at the Cultural Fest at the end of April, and they're performing on the variety show. So mariachi has actually gotten very busy.
Nice.
For me. Yeah.
And what about summer or fall? Do you have, or is it just kind of one semester at a time?
I think there's been talk in our district about maybe trying to do like some summer camp offerings for our students. So we're still trying to navigate all that. I know, speaking for myself, the last couple of years have been like you're running 1,000 miles an hour, trying to stay ahead of all the changes that the pandemic has kind of made us kind of have to pivot. I hate using that word, but because we've overused it so much. But so I kind of felt like we kind of need time to breathe a little bit. So I think this summer I might offer less for the students so that I can better prepare for the next school year. Because I feel like next school year will hopefully be a little bit more quote unquote normal of a school year. I think everyone thought this school year was going to be the normal one, but as we saw, there were still mitigations in place. There were things constantly changing and shifting. So, I think I want to go into next year with a more things kind of set in my mind for what we want to do. So, this might be a take a break and planning summer for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those are good. Strategic planning.
Yeah. And, and that's something actually our department did last summer. Every school district is different, but our school district offers these summer curriculum projects where you can apply to get paid to do work on curriculum. And so as a department, we decided to do one for our music team so that we could have those discussions about like, what is like kind of the marketing plan we want to have for music. What are some big goals that we have that we want to have be unified across the building or within our department through band, orchestra, and choir, that you don't have time to have these discussions during the school year because you're just go, one thing next. We're running different places. We're just trying not to be in the same room at the same time, so I am so grateful to my team that they were like, we're willing to commit this time in the summer to do the strategic planning. And I want to, hopefully someone needs to hear that it's okay to maybe put a pause on things that you're constantly doing for the kids, because sometimes you do need time to either refresh yourself or to refresh yourself as a department so that you can be more present for your students come fall.
Excellent. Lots of excellent words of wisdom on all sorts of levels. And what about, are you getting some performance opportunities, either chamber music or orchestral, that you're looking forward to?
Right now, I'm just kind of playing at my church. I took a step back with I had been actually playing with a different quartet for the last several years. And then I had to step away from that just because the workload at work was getting so crazy when the pandemic hit and all that stuff. So I'm actually looking to get back into performing a little bit more. And, I'm going to put in a little plug because one thing I am excited about this summer is I'm planning to do the Illinois Comprehensive Music through Performance, the CMP week-long class. And I know CMP started in Wisconsin, where you are. And I like for me as an educator, it was such a game changer to really think about teaching and repertoire selection through that CMP model. And one of the things I love about that is you get to see lesson plans in all the disciplines. So you see a band, you see a choir, you see an orchestra, you see general music. And I'll be honest with you, some of like the best strategies that I have now incorporated into my teaching, I got out of the general music sessions, and so I think for us as teachers, we're so great about going to the orchestra sessions, and going to ASTA and going to IMEA and doing those things. But I think these opportunities like CMP that let us work within other disciplines in music, there's so much we can learn from each other, and such great ideas and strategies. And when you talk about connecting to students through the emotive side of music, like no one does that better than general music teachers, like good general music teachers. So like, I think those are the sessions that everybody's like in tears. We're singing the final song after the lesson and like people are crying because they've connected us to the music in such a deep and powerful way. I'm like, that's what I want to do for my kids.
Yeah.
So go to CMP. It's an awesome thing.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to have both, right? To have that sort of experience and then also to have the very string specific string crossed to the inside of the string. Aha,
Yeah.
They're all so inspiring and good to just keep pushing to the forefront of one's musical brain.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, you. This has been a real delight having you on and visiting with you, as it always is.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to talk with you too.
Excellent. Well, and best of luck with the rest of the semester.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. Happy practicing. See you next Friday.